Sirach chapter 27. Many have committed sin for gain, and those who seek to get rich will avert their eyes. As a stake is driven firmly into a fissure between stones, so sin is wedged in between selling and buying. If a person is not steadfast in the fear of the Lord, his house will be quickly overthrown. When a sieve is shaken, the refuse appears. So does a person's waste when he speaks. The kiln tests the potter's vessels, and the test of a person is in his conversation. Its fruit discloses the cultivation of a tree. So does speech the thoughts of the human mind. Do not praise anyone before he speaks, for this is the way people are tested. If you pursue justice, you will attain it, and wear it like a glorious robe. Birds roost with their own kind, so honesty comes home to those who practice it. A lion lies in wait for prey, so does sin for evildoers. The conversation of the godly is always wise, but the fool changes like the moon. Among stupid people, limit your time, but among thoughtful people, linger on. The talk of fools is offensive, and their laughter is wantonly sinful. Their cursing and swearing make one's hair stand on end, and their quarrels make others stop their ears. The strife of the proud leads to bloodshed, and their abuse is grievous to hear. Whoever betrays secrets destroys confidence, and will never find a congenial friend. Love your friends and keep faith with them, but if you betray their secrets, do not follow after them. For as a person destroys an enemy, so you have destroyed the friendship of your neighbor. And as you allow a bird to escape from your hand, so you have let your neighbor go and will not catch him again. Do not go after him, for he is too far off and has escaped like a gazelle from a snare. For a wound may be bandaged, and there is a reconciliation after abuse, but whoever has betrayed secrets is without hope. Whoever winks the eye plots harm, and those who know such a one will keep their distance. In your presence their mouths are all sweetness, and they admire your words, but later they will twist their speech, and with your own words they will cause a scandal. I have hated many things, but them above all. Even the Lord hates them. Those who throw a stone straight up throw it on their own heads, and a treacherous blow opens up many wounds. Whoever digs a pit will fall into it, and whoever sets a snare will be caught in it. If people do evil, it will roll back upon them, and they will not know where it came from. Mockery and abuse issue from the proud, but vengeance lies in wait for them like a lion. Those who rejoice in the fall of the godly will be caught in a snare, and pain will consume them before their death. Anger and wrath, these also are abominations, yet a sinner holds on to them. Sirach chapter 28. The vengeful will face the Lord's vengeance, for he keeps a strict account of their sins. Forgive your neighbor the wrong he has done, and then your sins will be pardoned when you pray. Does anyone harbor anger against another and expect healing from the Lord? If people have no mercy toward those like themselves, can they then seek pardon for their own sins? If mere mortals harbor wrath, who will make an atoning sacrifice for their sins? Remember the end of your life, and set enmity aside. Remember corruption and death, and be true to the commandments. Remember the commandments, and do not be angry with your neighbor. Remember the covenant of the Most High, and overlook faults. Refrain from strife, and your sins will be fewer, for the hot-tempered kindle strife, and the sinner disrupts friendships, and sows discord among those who are at peace. In proportion to the fuel, so will the fire burn, and in proportion to the obstinacy, so will strife increase. In proportion to people's strength will be their anger, and in proportion to their wealth they will increase their wrath. A hasty quarrel kindles a fire, and a hasty dispute sheds blood. If you blow on a spark, it will glow. If you spit on it, it will be put out, yet both come out of your mouth. Curse the gossips and the double-tongued, for they destroy the peace of many. Slander has shaken many and scattered them from nation to nation. It has destroyed strong cities and overturned the houses of the great. Slander has driven courageous women from their homes and deprived them of the fruit of their toil. Those who pay heed to slander will not find rest, nor will they settle down in peace. The blow of a whip raises a welt, but a blow of the tongue crushes the bones. Many have fallen by the edge of the sword, but not as many as have fallen because of the tongue. Happy is the one who is protected from it, who has not been exposed to its anger, who has not borne its yoke, and who has not been bound with its fetters. For its yoke is a yoke of iron, and its fetters are fetters of bronze. Its death is an evil death, and Hades is preferable to it. It has no power over the godly. They will not be burned in its flame. Those who forsake the Lord will fall into its power. It will burn among them and will not be put out. It will be sent out against them like a lion. Like a leopard, it will mangle them. Look, fence in your property with thorns, and make a door and a bolt for your mouth. Lock up your silver and gold, and make balances and scales for your words. Take care not to err with your tongue, and fall victim to one lying in wait. Sirach chapter 29. The merciful lend to their neighbors. By holding out a helping hand, they keep the commandments. Lend to your neighbor in his time of need. Repay your neighbor when a loan falls due. Keep your word and be honest with him, and on every occasion you will find what you need. Many regard a loan as a windfall and cause trouble to those who help them. One kisses another's hands until he gets a loan and is deferential in speaking of his neighbor's money. But at the time for repayment he delays and pays back with empty promises and finds fault with the time. If he can pay, his creditor will hardly get back half and will regard that as a windfall. If he cannot pay, the borrower has robbed the other of his money, and he has needlessly made him an enemy. He will repay him with curses and reproaches, and instead of glory will repay him with dishonor. Many refuse to lend, not because of meanness, but from fear of being defrauded needlessly. Nevertheless, be patient with someone in humble circumstances, and do not keep him waiting for your alms. Help the poor for the commandment's sake, and in their need do not send them away empty-handed. Lose your silver for the sake of a brother or a friend, and do not let it rust under a stone and be lost. Lay up your treasure according to the commandments of the Most High, and it will profit you more than gold. Store up almsgiving in your treasury, and it will rescue you from every disaster. Better than a stout shield and a sturdy spear, it will fight for you against the enemy. A good person will be surety for his neighbor, but the one who has lost all sense of shame will fail him. Do not forget the kindness of your guarantor, for he has given his life for you. A sinner wastes the property of his guarantor, and the ungrateful person abandons his rescuer. Being surety has ruined many who were prosperous and has tossed them about like waves of the sea. It has driven the influential into exile, and they have wandered among foreign nations. The sinner comes to grief through surety. His pursuit of gain involves him in lawsuits. Assist your neighbor to the best of your ability, but be careful not to fall yourself. The necessities of life are water, bread, and clothing, and also a house to assure privacy. Better is the life of the poor under their own crude roof than sumptuous food in the house of strangers. Be content with little or much, and you will hear no reproach for being a guest. It is a miserable life to go from house to house. As a guest, you should not open your mouth. You will play the host and provide drink without being thanked. And besides this, you will hear rude words like these. Come here, stranger, prepare the table. Let me eat what you have there. Be off, stranger, for an honored guest is here. My brother has come for a visit, and I need the house. It is hard for a sensible person to bear scolding about lodging and the insults of the moneylender. Sirach chapter 30. He who loves his son will whip him often, so that he may rejoice at the way he turns out. He who disciplines his son will profit by him, and will boast of him among acquaintances. He who teaches his son will make his enemies envious, and will glory in him among his friends. When the father dies, he will not seem to be dead, for he has left behind him one like himself, whom in his life he looked upon with joy, and at death without grief. He has left behind him an avenger against his enemies, and one to repay the kindness of his friends. Whoever cherishes his son will bind up his wounds, and at every cry his heart will be troubled. An unbroken horse turns out stubborn, and an unchecked son turns out headstrong. Pamper a child, and he will terrorize you. Play with him, and he will grieve you. Do not laugh with him, or you will have sorrow with him, and in the end you will gnash your teeth. Give him no freedom in his youth. Beat his sides while he is young, or else he will become stubborn and disobey you. Discipline your son and make his yoke heavy, so that you may not be offended by his shamelessness. Better off poor, healthy, and fit than rich and afflicted in body. Health and fitness are better than any gold, and a robust body than countless riches. There is no wealth better than health of a body, and no gladness above joy of heart. Death is better than a life of misery, and eternal sleep than chronic sickness. Good things poured out upon a mouth that is closed are like offerings of food placed upon a grave. Of what use to an idol is a sacrifice? For it can neither eat nor smell. So is the one punished by the Lord. He sees with his eyes and groans as a eunuch groans when embracing a young woman. Do not give yourself over to sorrow, and do not distress yourself deliberately. A joyful heart is life itself, and rejoicing lengthens one's lifespan. Indulge yourself and take comfort, and remove sorrow far from you. For sorrow has destroyed many, and no advantage ever comes from it. Jealousy and anger shorten life, and anxiety brings on premature old age. Those who are cheerful and merry at table will benefit from their food.